Welcome to the tutorial Creating a Scene through the Harmony Network. So before we begin, let me answer some very basic questions. What is Harmony? Well, Harmony is a team-based infrastructure for animation production. So what that means in layman terms is that it's a system that allows you to organize the production of an animation, which can be very complicated because there are multiple scenes and multiple people working on those scenes. So it basically just gives you a structure to organize the people and those scenes. So what is the Harmony Network? Well, that is a link between the machines, your computers, and the server. So nothing ever actually gets saved on the hard drive of an individual computer in an animation studio. And you're never uploading or downloading information from the server. You're always working directly on the server. So let's begin by launching Harmony Stage. So if you're using a Mac, you can go to Finder, Applications, and if you scroll down, you'll find a folder that says 2.Harmony. And although some of your other applications might have a single icon, 2.Harmony is actually a folder with multiple programs inside. So let's launch Stage by double-clicking on it. And if you're using Windows, you would go to the Start menu, which is generally located on the lower left-hand side of your computer, go into your programs, and you'll find a similar folder that says 2.Harmony, and inside it you should find the icon to launch Stage. So let's double-click on that. So the fact that I even have a username available here is because users were created previously by your system administrator, most probably, or the technical director. I'm not going to show you how to do that in this video. It's something that you can learn about in the Harmony Server User Guide, or we might potentially do tutorials on it later on, but it's not something I'm going to show you here. So there are two options here. You can either connect to the database or you can work offline. For this particular video, I'm going to show you how to work when you're connected to the database. There will be another video that shows you the split off, what you would do when you're working offline. So let's say OK. So unlike other Toon Boom products where you see a welcome screen that allows you to create or open a scene, for Harmony, when you're connected to the network, what comes up is the database selector. And in this database selector, you can choose a scene, but you can never just choose a scene because a scene always belongs to a job and a job always belongs to an environment. So the only environment listed here right now is a cartoon series. And that cartoon series has specific episodes. And if you click on those episodes, it reveals the specific scenes built for that episode. So all of this is done through the control center, which I'm going to get into in very, very great detail in about 2 minutes. But let's just take a look at what an environment, job, and scene is. An environment is something like we have here a cartoon series. I'm sure you can list several dozen in your head. Or it could be a feature film, for example, or it could just be a general category for commercial jobs that you have, animated commercial jobs. So then in the jobs category, if your environment is a cartoon series, it could be the various episodes for that cartoon series. If it was for just animated commercials, it could be the names of the specific contracts, so the names of the specific jobs, such as some brand name detergent or some brand name hot dog, something like that. And then every job or episode will have several scenes built for it because an animation is comprised of scenes. So this is how you would select your scene. Then you have your options for the rights that you have to modify. And once again, these options are also dictated in the control center, which I'll show you in 2 minutes. The fact that you even have the ability to enable or disable the rights to modify a scene, the scene version, or all the scene assets is controlled in the control center, and you can make those choices here now. Then you can decide if you want the current version or a previous version which would be listed in the drop down. It will show you who this current version was last saved by and the date that it was saved by. And after you make those selections, you can click on Open. So if this was the first time that you had launched Harmony, you would see a dialog box that would ask you whether you would like to configure Harmony to the Flash keyboard shortcuts. And if you're used to using Flash, it might be a good idea to say yes to that option. If you are used to using other Toon Boom products, you might want to say no, because that means all of the keyboard shortcuts will be the ones that you're used to in using other Toon Boom products. We actually use the Flash shortcuts throughout these videos because those are the ones used in the user guide. So if you want to follow along through these videos, you might want to say yes for the moment for those Flash shortcuts, and I'll show you in the Creating a Scene for Harmony standalone video how to change those shortcuts later on. So here, just to show you quickly, we have this character that I designed super quickly, of course, and then a background which is just a solid line. So that's something that you would see in the scene. But let's close this and go to the Control Center so that I can show you how to create the environment, jobs, and scenes that you saw in that database selector. Okay, so if you're using a Mac, you probably still have your Toon Boom Harmony folder open on your desktop. If you're using Windows, you have to go back to the Start menu and go back into your program files and select the Harmony folder once more. And inside that folder this time, instead of double-clicking on the stage icon, we're going to double-click on the Control Center. So I'm going to go through what we're going to do in the Control Center so you can understand how environments, jobs, and scenes are created. However, if you're just an animator or an ink and painter, you'll probably never do this part of the production. However, it's good to see and know just so you have an understanding of where these scenes come from. So I'm going to log in myself, or you can always log in as USA Batch, depending on who has the administrative rights. In the Control Center, you're not able to see the jobs or scenes of an environment unless you actually select it. So you have to select the environment, then you select the job, then you can see the scenes. I'm just going to minimize that. Once you select a scene, you can also see its elements, and if you select its elements, you can see its drawing. So it's always done in this kind of hierarchy. So let's create an environment together. So you can do this in two ways. You can either go to the top menu here and select Environment, Create, or you can click in the Environment section, so this white square, right-click and select Create. So then this little dialog box comes up, the Create Environment dialog box. So you can put the name of your environment here, and like I explained before, that could be a feature film, a cartoon series, whatever. So let's call this one Feature Film. There are a few rules that you need to know about the naming convention. Because Harmony is cross-platform, which means that it can be run on Windows, Mac, OS X, or on Linux, it's very important how you name your files. So it's always recommended to use lowercase letters and underscores in place of spaces so that all the files are read the same no matter what platform you're using. So here's where you can give the rights to modify an asset, and I'll check this right now and say OK. So now we have a new environment. So to delete an environment, you can do the exact same thing. You can go to the top menu and select Delete, or you can right-click and select to delete. So right now this environment doesn't have any jobs or scenes created for it, so you're able to delete it. I'm just going to cancel this. However, if you want to delete something like the cartoon series, you'll see that the delete is grayed out, and that's because in order to delete an environment, you have to delete all of its jobs and all of the jobs' scenes. So it's sort of a foolproof way of making sure you don't accidentally delete an entire environment, because an environment is huge. It carries multiple episodes, multiple scenes, multiple drawings, multiple everything. So to delete one of these is really deleting a big deal. So if you have to delete everything one at a time manually in sort of a hierarchical fashion, that ensures you won't accidentally delete something very, very important. So let's go back to our feature film. And I'm going to go into one little thing about setting up custom resolutions. And this is a little bit complicated. There's a specific file that you need to put in a specific place in order to be able to create custom resolutions for new environments that you create. So let's go back to our Finder, or if you're using Windows, into your 2.Harmony folder. I believe that's the same if you're using Linux. And this time let's go into this folder called TBA. And from this folder we're going to go into Resources, and we're going to go into Samples. And then from Samples we want to open up the document resolution.conf. And you can open up this type of a document in TextEdit on Mac and in Notepad on Windows. So I'm going to click on that, right click and say Open with Other, and I'm going to search for TextEdit. And as you can see, it looks like a regular text document. But what we're really interested in here are these resolutions that are listed. So we have several standard resolution types, their dimensions, their frames per second, and whether they're horizontal or vertical, indicated by the capital H or capital V. So let's add a custom resolution by following the same structure that we see here. So let's write resolution, and let's call this one cartoon. I'm going to make mine 1280 by 800, and I'll make the frames per second 30, and I'll make the scene horizontal. And then I'm going to save that, and then close the document. Then I'm going to right click on it again and say copy resolution.conf. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Macintosh hard drive. So if you're using Windows, you're going to go into My Computer, double click on your hard drive, so it's usually the C:/ I believe your hard drive, Program Files, Toon Boom Animation, 2.Harmony, Resources, and I believe in that folder you'll be able to find your USA_DB folder. And then in this folder, you have to create a new folder and name it Resolution. So just Resolution, not Resolutions with an S or anything like that. Then in this folder, you have to paste your resolution.conf doc. And you can actually edit it from here, because now that it exists in this folder, in this directory, you can once again just edit it. So now let's go back to our applications and start Harmony stage. So let's connect to the database again. And actually, let me show you several things. Let's take off all our rights to modify and say open. So I'm going to show you two things here. So first of all, if we go to Scene Settings, now in this resolution panel, you'll see that along with all the standard, industry standard default resolutions, I have my custom resolution here, which I called Cartoon. It's 1280 by 800, it's horizontal, and it's 30 frames per second, so everything that I listed. One of the other things that you can do, which I didn't show you, so let's go back to that document. Is that you can change the default. So right now the default is NTSC, but I can change this to anything that we see listed below. So if I change this to cartoon here, this is now the default. If I change it to HDTV, now this is, oh, you have to make sure you spell it correctly, is also the default. So anything you listed here below as a resolution, you can then use as a default. So I'm going to put it back to NTSC. And then close. The second thing I wanted to show you is that because we uncheck those modification boxes, from the inside of Harmony Stage, you can also change your rights to modify. And you would do that by going to File, and either selecting Rights to Modify Scene version or Rights to Modify Scene. Then what happens is that under the File menu, these become grayed out because you now have these options. And now if I make changes to the scene, I'll be able to save them. So I'm going to close this again. And I'm not going to save. Okay. So now let's talk about the jobs. For our feature film, let's create a job. So we can do it much the same way that we did when we created an environment. So you can either go to Jobs, Create, or you can right-click in the actual area for the jobs and select the menu item Create. So we're going to give our job a name, and so for a feature film, we can set it up very episodically like we did with the cartoon series, or we can divide it into scenes with minor scenes. So I'm just going to go with episodes for now because it's the easiest to understand. And I'll name it 001. And what they're asking you here for the TD and the ATD is the technical director and the assistant technical director. And from this list, usually you'll have a drop down of a lot of the people that you work with in your studio, and you'll know who the technical director is. So right now I'll just assign it to USA Batch, and then the assistant technical director, it should be someone in your company that you also know. Or if you have two technical directors, you can just assign one name for one and one name for the other. For the approval rating, because I want to show you some other features, we're going to change it from automatic to manual. And what this is that your scene will go through several stages as it would normally through an animation production. So if you're doing traditional animation, you may have done some hand drawings that then need to be scanned. After they get scanned, they need to be inked. After they get inked, they need to be painted, etc., etc. So by having this manual approval rating set, every time your scene goes through a stage, someone has to change the approval setting to have it passed on to the next stage. The next thing you have to select is the priority. And the priority goes in order of first, number 1 being the highest, or even 0, I believe, being the highest, and 10 being the lowest. And this is in terms of vectorization or rendering cues. So any type of a batch cue where you might have to send your scene, then you have to put it in order of a certain priority, because then even if something is, a later episode in the series, but there's like for some reason a priority for it to get done first, well then you can scooch it up the list and it'll be jumped in the queue before a scene that you may have thought is an earlier scene in a TV series. But once these scenes are in the queue and they're being processed, then at that point, even if you change it, it won't be bumped ahead of something that's being processed. So I'm going to name this one 1 for now, so it's a pretty high priority, and say OK. Right, okay, so this brings up a good point. I cannot name this episode _001 because this name exists in cartoon series. I have an episode 001. So let's name this scene _001. I hope this won't get too confusing because we do have a scene section, but what I'll do is I'll put the shots in here, the scenes in here for our feature film environment. Another thing you could do is you could put the name of the cartoon series. So if you have 7 cartoon series like The Simpsons, The Flintstones, the whatever, you could actually put or FS for Flintstones or SIMP for Simpsons _EP_ the number so you can have multiple episode numbers available in the jobs category. But I'll just leave it like this for now and say OK. So the second thing I wanted to show you is several ways of updating a job. So we're going to select our job, our scene 1 in this window, and you can either right click or go to the jobs menu here. And the two things that you can do is you can change the stage and the priority. So let's change the stage first. So right now our scene 001 is in production, but when it's completed, so several animators and artists who are working on it have completed it and signed off on it, then you can select it and move it to the completed section here. And then when you say OK, what it does is it actually removes it from the jobs list. So it hasn't been deleted, it still exists, but it's no longer in the control center, a place where you're managing the jobs. So to bring that job back, what you can then do is right-click somewhere in the job section and select the menu item Change Stage. So now once again you can see your job and you can bring it back to the In Production field and then click OK, and then it returns to the job section. So the second thing I wanted to show you was that you can change the priority of the job. So just as when we created the job in itself, we were able to set the priority. Now you can change the priority because priorities change in an animation production. Often certain jobs are needed before others and that are not necessarily in the proper viewing order. So you can make that change here and then just say OK to validate it. So the next thing I'd like to show you is how to delete a job. So once again, if this job has scenes in the scene category, then those need to be deleted first before this job can be deleted. So to delete a job, you can go to the top menu and select Delete, or you can right-click after selecting it in the Jobs field and select Delete. So there's several things that you need to know as the person managing the control center when you're about to delete a job. Jobs should never be deleted when they are in use by someone else, and because you have multiple animators, painters, inkers working on this job, that's something you have to be 100% sure of. It's best just to wait till everyone is offline completely so no one else is connected to the Harmony network. If you don't wait and you do delete a job while it's in progress and someone's working on it, you risk corrupting the job. So you get the confirmation dialog box once again if you're absolutely sure you want to delete this job, and I'm going to say no in this case. So the next thing I'd like to show you is how to create a scene. So once again, you can go to the scene menu at the top and select Create, or you can right-click in the scene field and select the menu item Create. So this is where you can name your scene, and actually by hitting Enter you can create several scenes at once for your job. So let's name this one Shot 001, this one we'll name Shot 002, this one we'll name Shot 002 B, let's say, and Shot 003. It might be cleaner to name this one A to indicate there's an A and a B partition. So something like that. Because I created these scenes one after another, they're all going to have their data saved in the same file system path. If you do not have a file system path showing up, there is something that you can do. So let's go back to our program files, or our programs rather, our applications on Mac. Find our 2.Harmony folder and go into the TBA file again and the resources folder once more and the samples. And from that samples there's another document above resolution that's called manager.conf. So I'm going to open this. So what we see here is another text document. But what we're really interested in this document is this path right here, the scene directory pattern. So this path is pointing you to a place on your hard drive, and I'll show you where that is. So if we go to our hard drive, on Windows it should be somewhere in My Computer, in your program files. It's this folder right here, USA Data, and what's in there now is episode 003. And this file with all these scenes actually belongs to cartoon series. I don't know if you remember, but in cartoon series in episode 3 we have all these scenes, so that file path was correct. So now we have to make sure that we can do that for feature film scene 1, all these episodes. And this is once again only if you don't see that file path when you're creating a scene in your file systems section. So what you can do is you can change the path so it looks like this. So it just says USA Data in capital letters with a space beside. And we're going to save that. And close the window. So now all of these should be in the same section. So there it is. So now we have scene 1, 001, as our job, just like episode 003 is a job. And these are the scenes, these shots are actually scenes that belong to this job. So that's just something to know in case you aren't able to do that. And also one more thing, in case you don't have the rights to modify that document, which is often the case, if for some reason you don't, you could get info, this is just for Mac specifically, and here at the bottom you can unlock this and enter in your administrative password. And then if this is seen as a read only, that's a problem, so you have to make sure it says read and write. And then you can relock it and close this window, and then you'll be able to save. You would only need to do that if you are unable to save that new path in this document. Okay, so now that we've created our scenes, let's look at different ways of updating our scenes. So let's select a scene, and once again, if you don't see any scenes here, make sure that your environment is selected in order to see your jobs, and that your job is selected in order to see all the scenes. So the first way that we can modify a scene is by moving it. So you can do that by going to the Scenes menu and selecting Move, or by right-clicking on that selected scene and selecting Move. So if you have created many scenes and you're running out of space, something you can do is move your scenes to a different directory. So here we can see the size of the scene, and if you select a different scene, you can always press the button Calculate and it'll show you how big it is. And then you can select another scene from this Move to Scenes field. And if there are no other scenes written here, what you can then do is browse for another directory where you'd like to move these new scenes. So let me just pick one. So just randomly pick this other place. So instead of USA Data, I'd put USA_DB. So you could always select this and say OK, and it will now move that scene to this folder. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to cancel. But I just wanted to show you that. The second way you can modify a scene is if you'd like to rename it. Sometimes during production, the names of episodes, which could be your scene or your job or whatever, changes, and so you need to be able to update that to keep everybody current. So once again, you can go to the Scene menu and select Rename, or you can right-click on the scene and select Rename. And in this dialog box, you can rename your shot. So let's name this one A, for example, and say OK. So now it's updated the scene name. The next thing you can do is you can change the priority once again. So you can select your scene, go to the top menu and select Scene Change Priority, or you can right-click on that scene and select Change Priority. And once again, just as we did for the jobs, you can change the priority order of your scene, because once again in production, often that priority does change, and say OK. You can also change the stage of a scene. So that means where it is in the production process. So let's go to Scene, Change Stage, and once again, you can also do this through right-clicking. So here you have a drop-down list, and it has various stages that are typical for the production of animation. So the scanning, XSheet, vectorize, pencil test, paint, scene planning, camera, and completed. So right now our scene is at the XSheet stage, so we can change it from XSheet to scan and say OK. So now it has a different stage. Lastly, you can change the sequence, so this ordering that we see, and you can click anywhere in the scenes field and say reorder. And so it gives you this dialog box that allows you to click on any of the headings to reorder by, like, say, priority. So it reverse order. If you click on it twice, you get the reverse order. If you click on it again, you get the ascending order. So 1 first, then 7. If this was like 2, 3, 4, it would go in that order. You can do it by date. These are all created the same date, so if you click on it, it's really not going to do anything. It could be in order of your technical director. Maybe the technical director's scenes should come first if they're a certain person, and if there's somebody else, another technical director, then those scenes might need to go first, etc. So obviously you have many options by which you can reorder your scenes. So I just made them opposite alphanumeric, so in descending order. So the next thing I'd like to show you is how to clear a scene. And clearing a scene is not the same as deleting a scene. When you want to clear a scene, you want to remove the network and XSheet information, but retain things like the scanned drawings, for example. And when you're clearing a scene, you want to delete all the database information, but you want to keep all the structure there so someone can go in and start from scratch. So to clear a scene, you can select it and go to the scene menu and select clear. And once again, you get a warning message because this is a very serious procedure. If you want to clear, you're going to basically delete the work of many, many people who might have worked on timing of the entire scene. So you have to be really, really careful when you do this. So you can say OK or cancel. And then if you had said OK, it would have been like creating a blank scene once again, but it would stay in the scenes list. It wouldn't have been deleted. However, if you would like to delete a scene, you can once again go to the scene menu and select delete. And of course, it gives you a confirmation because once again, once you delete this, not only will you be deleting the XSheet and the network, but you'll also be deleting all the scan drawings, all the vectorized drawings, all the information in the database, as well as all the information relating to that scene. So I'm going to say no, but that would be the way that you could delete a scene. And just to reiterate, you should never make any of the modifications that we talked about while someone is using a scene, or to be even safer, while anyone else is online. So the last thing I'd like to show you is how to view the elements and drawings. So at the beginning of this tutorial, I uncollapsed them. So usually you might see the control center like this with these two sections collapsed. That's how you uncollapse them. You can't add elements or drawings to a scene through the control center. You actually have to do it through either the XSheet or through Stage. But you can actually view the elements inside a scene as well as the drawings. So in my cartoon series environment in episode 3, I think scene 1 is the only one that actually has some elements. So they're named background and character. And then you can see the name of the drawing. So we have camera and then the state that it's in, whether it was scanned in black and white in color, the type, etc. So you get a little bit of information about what is in each scene. So that's it for the tutorial, creating a scene through the Harmony network. Stay tuned for the next video, creating a scene through Stage standalone.